Hi, everybody. I'm Rick DiClemente. This is Astrology Unplugged. Looking forward to this evening. I was giving a lot of thought on the possibilities of what this week's subject was, and I got stuck looking through my old stuff on why is astrology so hard to do? And I thought that's a really good subject. So a couple of things before we get started, I want to mention to you. Um, I want to thank some of the people who have been kindly sending me little donations to help me pay for our monthly Zoom fee, and ask the others who've not to please generously donate whatever you can to the show to help with that. And that donate button is on the top of my website. Anything you can do would be greatly appreciated. And the ones of you that have been donating, even a little bit, I really appreciate it. Now, secondly, tonight I want to ask, this is Liza's idea. At the end of the show, I'm going to ask you what subjects you would like to see me bring up. Doesn't mean I will, but give me ones to think about. So by the end of the show, gives you this whole hour and a half to write down things that you would like to hear discussed more. Okay. Now, tonight is a tough one because in asking people, why is astrology so hard? Do I spend all my time showing you why it's hard, or do I start showing you more and more of how to make it easier? It's a little bit of both. Okay. So I started to think about the approach to this discussion. It's not simple. 71, I started to follow sun signs a lot. I got my chart done and I started to learn people's sun signs. And I got to really asking a lot of questions like you do in the beginning about why astrology is this and that. By 78, I became obsessed with it. In 78, I found Arroyo, the author, and I started studying very heavily, and he influenced me greatly. So since 78, I've not stopped. It's just been constant. So there's no replacement for doing a lot of charts, doing O.J. Simpson's chart, doing Michael Jackson's chart, doing the president's chart, doing Killer's chart, doing this guy running for this office chart, to this woman you just met, just do everybody. And that's what's so really good about this free program from Astrolabe. It's called the hell is it called? Celeste. It's called Celeste. Celeste is a free program. You go to Astrolabe, the makers of solar fire software, and their website is alabe, ALABE.com. And on their website, you can get free software called Celeste. Celeste runs on your iPhone. It also runs on the other type of operating system. It's free. It only does one chart at a time. So while you do one chart, you can have one little chart in the background, and that's it. So it's very limited, but it's very nice for quickly looking up where somebody's planets were, as she is showing us on her screen, Erica, right now. Um, It really is really nice because you can look up things very quickly, especially ones where you don't have a birth time, but you just want to know where the planets are. It's really good. Then you can go up $25 higher than that and invest in what's called solar. Oh, I can't remember all these names. You can invest in Astro Gold. And Astro Gold is by the same company, I believe, and it's only $25, but it lets you save charts and lets you combine charts, etc., and things get a lot better. But you'll get an awful lot of the free program Celeste, believe me. Now, when we think of astrology, I want to get over one physical problem first so you understand what we're doing. The difference in the two zodiacs. Now, I'm not going to pressure you like this is the finals and you got to get your final exam straight, but you need to understand where in the hell the planets are before you can understand how to do a chart. Now, there are two zodiacs. There are two different kinds. One's astrological, which is what we use in the West. One's astronomical, which is what the astronomers use. And they're not connected at all. They're completely different. As a matter of fact, the astronomers try to make us look bad because they think we don't know about the other one. They're using the wrong one. They don't even know. They're so clueless. Okay. The astronomers use the one that's lined up with the constellations. The constellation of Aries, the constellation of Taurus, etc. You don't have to memorize it, but you've all seen that belt that goes around the earth, around the sky, the belt of the 12 signs, and the sign that's represented by that animal or whatever. Astronomers, in other words, if you were to stop everything, today's the first day of spring, let's say, March 20th. If you were to stop everything and you draw a line from the earth through the sun and out into the galaxy, remember in astrology, we put the earth in the middle because that's the subject. It's egocentric. It's geocentric, earth in the middle. There's other types of astrology is called heliocentric, where you put the sun in the middle. Western astrology is not like that. We cheat, we do all kind of cheating in Western astrology to put the earth in the middle and to put all the planets around it equidistant. I mean, it looks like it's this far to Pluto. Well, it looks far like it's that far to the moon and that far to Mercury. They all look equidistant around. That's not how it is, and that's not how it works. But the main thing is this. In astronomy, when you draw a line on spring through the sun out into the constellations, you will hit the very beginning of Aries if the year was 0. Back in the year around 0, when you drew a line through the earth, through the sun, and you intersected those 12 zodiacal constellations, you would line up with the very beginning of Aries. And you won't happen again for 26,500 years. They start getting out of sync. They get out of sync for 26,000 years. This is why they're two zodiacs. Right now, if you drew a line, you would get about the 3rd degree of Pisces. So we have been backing up, the astronomers have been backing up from 30 Pisces to 29 Pisces to 28 Pisces, back to 5 Pisces, back to about 3 Pisces. And you can see we're approaching the age of Aquarius, because we're going to back up into 30 degrees of Aquarius. We're not sure when, but it's around now. That's astronomy. Got nothing to do with astrology. And astrology, this will blow your mind. Put the vice on your head so your head doesn't fall apart on this one. Astrology has nothing to do with the constellations. It's got nothing to do with the constellations. There's a relationship there that we can talk about, but that's not how it is. In astrology, every spring, no matter if it's year 1, no matter if it's 1952, no matter if it's the year 30,000, whatever, every year at spring, we draw a mythical line through the beginning of Aries. In other words, spring is always the beginning of Western astrology. And it always starts at a point that we call 0 Aries, even though nothing's lined up with 0 Aries. So every time you get a planetary placement like 5 degrees Libra, 4 degrees Virgo. Anytime somebody tells you that in Western astrology, we're telling you relative to 0 Aries, which is the day of spring. All Western astrology is related to 0 spring, which is around March 20th. And the two zodiacs used to be in line in the year 0. And the Western astrologers will always be 0 Aries on spring, always. And the astronomers will always be backing up every 72 years, changing a degree. And that's why we're approaching the age of Aquarius. They're two different things. So everything I'm going to talk about tonight is Western astrology. Okay. Now, we know that there are 10 planets. We're going to call 10 planets. I'm not going to argue about Pluto. Pluto is a planet, period. There. Okay. I'm not going to argue about Chiron, because Chiron is kind of an asteroid, a centaur, but it's a planet as far as we're concerned astrologically. I'm not going to argue about Aries, because Aries is a planet, even though it's beyond Pluto. So for our purposes, we're really using 12 planets. In normal talk, we're talking about the 10 planets. Sun, moon, they're not even planets. We call them planets. Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. Those are the 10 planets. So in astrology, we all have 10 planets somewhere in our chart. Don't get ahead. Don't get distracted. Listen to what I'm telling you. We have 10 planets in our chart, and that's counting Pluto, Eris, and it's counting Chiron, which is really 12. All of those 10 planets are in one of the 12 signs. So you've seen plenty of zodiacs. It's always the same. They're exactly 12 pieces up high, 30 degrees in each piece, with the zodiac around the circle. Okay? Every planet is in one of the signs. So you've got 10 possible planets moving at different speeds in one of the 12 signs, moving at different speeds. Then you've got what's called the houses. The houses have to do with a planet that's in a sign is like Chevy is to Corvair, Chevy is to Corvette, Ford is to Tempo, Ford Ranger, all these different types. So the planets in the signs are like telling you what kind of Chevy you have, what kind of Toyota you have, etc. When you put the planet in the sign. When you put it in the house, you have all 10 planets in one of the 12 houses. In addition, that's telling you where you drive the car. I use the car for the grocery store. I use the car for the church. I use the car to run the kids around to play soccer. I use the car to go on vacations. So when you look at your chart, you have 10 planets, which are energies. In the signs, the type of energy they are they scorpionic? Are they Martian? Are they Piscean? These different kinds of energies. And you hear about us every week. We're talking about these signs and the archetypal energy underneath them and what they're like, because they have a likeness to them. They have a style. They have a feel that's real. Then the next big thing you have, there's only 4 main things. There are other things that you can get involved with that get more complex. You got the planets in the signs, you got them in the houses, and the planets make aspects. One planet's at a right angle to another, one planet's opposite another, 2 planets are at a right angle to this one. One planet is trine to another one, which is 1/3 of the way around the circle. And that tells you how the planets intermix. That's it. That's it. And I got these people that call me, you wouldn't believe it. But they call me and say, hey, I really got interested in astrology recently. Where can I learn that? Well, multiply times 47 years for me of hard work. You don't learn it anywhere. Chuck is a big Reedy of mine, or we've been talking for many years on astrology. He's starting down the road and reading about the signs and the planets and all. He's starting to really get it. And all of you, I can sense, have different amounts of talent because you've been around for a while studying. Some of you pick it up better than others, but we're all learning more and more. And it's hard, but we're going to start to make it simpler. Now, you got the sun in a sign, such as Cancer, in a house, such as the fifth house, making an opposition to Pluto. That's it. So, what is the planet doing in that sign, if anything? What is it doing in that particular house, area of life, field of life? Is it making aspects to other planets? Is it making aspects to the ascendant, which is part of the house system? That's basically it. Now, there are many types of charts. There are many ways you can move the planets. You can do transits, you can do progressions, but that's basically the science of astrology. What does that planet mean in that sign? How is it acting in that sign? And that's why the books are really good by Arroyo in his notation book. What's it called, Claudia? It's his workbook, not his workbook, but his journal of the planetary energies.
Yeah, it's on the tip of my tongue. It's
It's his it's not a book you read straight through. It is a reference guide.
it's like a reference book, and you pick it up, and there's everything in there.
And it tells you what, if Venus combines with Mars, what is likely to be negative, what is likely to be positive. And when you start to understand the possible Venus negative Mars and the possible Venus Mars positive, you start to understand more about each planet. You start to learn about the two different sides. Okay. And they act out through the houses. Then you can get into fancy stuff like comparing my chart to your chart, all kinds of other types of chart. But if you can't do the basic chart, don't waste your time with it. And this is why you will see so many astrologers on these websites, in these magazines, in these different forums that you get to. They're chasing this and they're looking at that. And what are the lunar mansions? And what is the rising eclipse point? And they're chasing all these points. And they're so advanced points. And that tells me right away they don't know how to read a chart. Stephen Arroyo's Chart Interpretation Handbook. Thank you very much, Claudia. Stephen Arroyo's Chart Interpretation Handbook. That's a must for you because that tells you how Venus and Saturn combine, how Mars and Pluto combine, good and bad. They're just energies. And Arroyo's really, really good at staying very neutral. He stays very, very neutral. Which will help you stay neutral instead of getting these pre-programmed conceptions of what the planets do. Okay, so John, you understand me? Each planet is in a sign. It's also in a house, and it may or may not have aspects to other planets. That's the gist of the chart. If you can read a chart, then you're not going to be tempted with these part of fortune and part of marriage and all these thousands of Arabic points and the rising planets with the asteroids. And that's for people that can't do astrology. They want to look for something neat. Ooh, that's cool. Ooh, that's clever. Okay, what's it mean? What's it mean? To me, you come to me You put yourself before me with your trust, and I take your birth time and I do your chart, and I'm doing your reading, and it just happens naturally. It's just my style. My job is to find out what's going on in your life, because you don't know. You're probably close. You probably got an idea. You probably got it conceived a little different than I do, because I think in astro terms and you think in human terms, which makes sense. But after a while, I can sense where you're stuck or where you're hung up or how things are going. Because I can sense when the planets are going across you by the words you use. I can sense how you should be feeling. And most people today are feeling the way the planets say they should. And that's a real plus for people today. The people are more aware now. They're more in touch with their unconscious mind. They're more in touch with energies. You have phrases such as what's gotten into you, what's come over you lately. I can't get into that. I can't wrap my head around that. These terms that have come to us from the 50s and 60s are a big deal. They're very symbolic of us becoming more aware of these planets that are going by. Now, when the planet goes by and you feel the energy, I don't know how it works. I mean, I got theories, and I could talk to Blue about quantum physics and what's going on. But what got into Karen last night? What got into Debbie? I don't know what's come over Chuck recently. Chuck's not himself. He's just not. He's beside himself. And boy, Erica, she's really coming into it. Did you see what she's been doing lately? We start to use human words to describe what the planets are doing. And I don't know how. So we talk about it as if the planets are doing it, but the planets aren't doing it. The planets are symbolic of it. So just give me some leash. Just give me, Shelby, give me some extra slack to understanding it's not really Mars, but it seems like Mars. And Mars is a good way of talking about it. So this is why in the book we wrote, Exquisite Zodiac, this is why in other books, not so much in that book, we talk about the 10 planets. What is Venus like? What is Mars like? What is Jupiter like? Now, in your birth chart, here's the chart for right now, at this moment. Everybody see okay? Okay. This is a chart for the moment. And you'll notice that I'm using a different wheel style tonight because I want to show you the planets in the signs. Here's 3 planets in the sign of Taurus. Here's Venus in the sign of Gemini. Here's Mars in the sign of Cancer. Here's Pluto in the sign of Aquarius. You can see why last night was so heavy duty. The moon was opposite Pluto with a T-square to the sun. Heavy duty stuff. Okay, and at about 4 in the morning last night, I woke up when the moon was exactly opposite Pluto. You can imagine moon opposite Pluto is possible real heavy emotional turning points. It was. A lot of people were very moody last night and yesterday and the next couple of days. See, after a while, when you do astrology, you can sense which planet's coming. You can sense what it feels like. You can sense when it's starting, when it's going to peak, when it's going to subside. This is one of the real pains of being a beginner, because when you're a beginner, everything scares the hell out of you. Oh, here comes Mars. Oh, here comes Mars. Oh, well, here comes Mars. Okay. Well, after 30 some years, you watch Mars go by. I take it seriously. I understand it might cause a fever. It might cause me get cut. It might cause an irritation of the skin. It might cause fights. I understand how it might manifest and how it might not. But that's through time. You start to watch these things over and over. So you're learning a lot by looking at people's natal charts You're also learning a lot by watching what the planets are doing. That's why it's really important to have a program such as Celeste or Solar Fire, or you can go into astro.com and see where the planets are. Then you start to get an idea how fast they move. Then you start to get a better understanding. See, these are the parts of astrology that are absolutely essential. And this is why you've got to know the symbols or the glyphs for the planets and the signs. Got to. Or throw your books away.
Hey, Rick.
Yeah.
What are your, I continue to reference, and this is just from over the years of you kind of mentioning it, Astrodiant. So I don't know if that's the right way to pronounce it or not.
What?
Astrodiant?
Oh, yeah, right. That's a German name.
Yeah. I mean, is that still
Oh,
how
it's
does it
the,
compare to
it's
these?
the one. Yeah, that's astro.com. It's Astrodienst. It's a German name. It's the best in the world.
Okay.
Best free stuff in the world.
That's the one I've been using for years.
That's exactly right. If you're not going to spend $350 for the solar fire that you see me using, and Astrodienst is really, really excellent. You become a member. It's called astro.com. You can do progressions. You can do combinations. You can do all kinds of different types of charts.
I meant to make the point where it's not the $350 because once I understand it well enough that if there's more value in that, I'll go there. But right now,
well, what I'm saying to you is Astrodienst does just about all the same things that my solar fire does.
Okay.
And you can save it. You can save your chart, you can save your whole family. Like when you call me, I list all these 10 different good Aries people, and I start comparing all your charts together. You can do all that same work on Astrodienst, which is really astro.com, and it's all free on the web. And you can save it all and combine charts and put 2 or 3 charts together and all that stuff. So you're fine. Now, when I was talking to you about little Celeste, Celeste runs on my telephone. Okay. And so does Astro Gold. So I do almost all my work on Celeste, unless it's important. When a client comes to me, I do the chart and I save it. And I've got 3,000-4,000 charts in my system of people I've read for in my lifetime. Remember, I went through a flood in 2006 and I lost all my charts. Thousands of charts that are done by hand. Okay. Thank you, Chuck. All right. Now, so I want to know, what does Venus mean in Taurus? What does Venus mean in Leo? What does Venus mean in Aquarius? And if you don't have some idea, you are wasting your time. It's like trying to be a car mechanic, but I don't want to know what a carburetor does. I don't want to know what a gas tank does. It's really that simple. And you're not going to skip by this stuff. Now, this kind of sounds weird, but it's really easy to sit back and let Rick do all this work. And I'm really freewheeling and willing to do it. But you've got to do some work. You're going to learn. You got to learn what the symbols are for the planets and the signs. What does Venus in Aries differ from Venus in Capricorn? What does the Pluto period in Sagittarius, how does it differ from the Pluto period we're in now, which is in Aquarius? These are basic things. Now, let me give you some examples. When I go to the normal chart, I usually use a different chart format. You're not used to seeing this one. I like to use this for teaching because it shows me the planet in the sign. Here's the sign. These are the signs. It also shows what house. The houses are numbered here. So that's what's good about this. This is the European 4. In solar, there are hundreds of choices. And this one is called European 4. Okay? It's just one of 100 that I like because it shows you the aspects, it shows you the houses, etc. So, the moon is in Leo in the 9th house. Very soon, the moon in another 2 hours, since we got to get acquainted with how fast these planets move. 2 hours from now, the moon will move 1 degree. The moon will go into the 10th house. It'll still be in Leo, but it's going to go into the 10th house. See, it's in the 9th house. It's about to go in the 10th house. Okay, so you've all got the 10 planets. They're all in different signs, depending on how old you are. They're all in different houses. Notice we got 5 houses in a row that are empty. Doesn't mean a thing. And we'll get to this last. Planets are aspecting. Pluto's at a right angle to the sun. Mercury's conjunct Uranus. The moon is square to Jupiter. That's what these lines are for. These are the aspects. These are the least important of the 3. An aspect is, I'm trying to do my thing, but this guy here is always on the stage. I always use that sample.
Hey, Rick,
Yes.
you said you just said these are the least important of the 3.
Right.
What do you
When I'm trying to teach basic astrology, it's much more important to know the planet and the planet in the sign than it is to worry about the aspects.
Okay.
Aspects really confuse beginners. Oh, well, Christ, I got Mars opposite Saturn. I'm going to die. Oh. And that's how you learn this stuff. Oh, Jesus, I got a grand cross. Oh, I got Pluto opposite my moon. Well, that ain't nothing. I mean, you go to these websites and you read these dialogues between these people that are beginners, and they act like you're going to die. Uranus is coming over my Mercury next year. They just don't have any gauge. So in that sense, Claudia, they're still really important. Aspects are minor compared to learning what does this planet mean in that sign and in that house. But all 4 of those things are really critical. The planet in the sign, the planet in the house, and any planet that's making aspects to other planets. Those are your main 4 pillars of astrology. What's the planet? Mars. Where is it? It's in Gemini. Well, in Gemini, it's like this. And when it's in Taurus, it's like that. And when it's in Leo, it's like that. So the planets move through the zodiac and they pick up different natures. It's like putting 10, 12 different types of gasoline into your car. They operate differently. Then in the houses that they're in, that tells you where the car is usually driven. So what we see in this chart is the moon. Remember, the Earth is in the middle. This is what's confusing about Western astrology. The Earth, of course, is not in the middle, but from our perspective, it's called geocentric. Now, did you notice how the distance between the sun and the moon is the same distance as the sun to Pluto? Which is just ridiculous. The Pluto's really far away, and the moon's right in our face. But astrologically, we're using astrology to kind of look down on the zodiac, to look down, make everything equidistant. And this is how you read a birth chart. So, the birth time is what gives rise to the house system. That's all I'm going to say for now. The birth time is whether you're looking at the chart like this, or you're looking at it like this. Are you looking at it like this? That's what the birth time does. It lets the whole chart rotate 1 time per day. And that's what the birth time does. So in the birth chart, Pluto, we know, has just spent 15 years in Taurus, or in Capricorn. I'm sorry, It's been in here since '08, and it just came out recently. Now you see it's crossed into Aquarius. It's going to go back into Capricorn. So relatively, it moves very slowly. Now, it's actually moving very fast, but it's so far away that it seems like it takes forever. So when Pluto goes over one of your planets, it seems like forever because it's going over and back and forth, back and forth. So these are called slow moving planets, slow moving outer planets. And the outer moving planets are the big deals. They're the ones that cause heavy duty era changing time periods. Pluto, Neptune, Uranus, Saturn. I do almost all my work with Pluto, Neptune, Uranus, Saturn. Sometimes I watch Aries, but Aries moves so slowly, but she's very important. And Chiron is too. Are you guys following me? I want you to interrupt me and say, stop, you're going too fast if it's too fast for you. I'm not trying to impress anybody. I want you to get what I'm saying. Are you guys getting what I'm saying? We go like this. Yeah, this is what it means. Yeah. Okay, Rick. Rick's up there. Charles is just staring at me. Okay. All right. After a while, you'll start to really sense how fast these planets move. Now, the outer planets are generational. Because,
Hey, Rick.
yes.
So I thought in Aurora's book, the one on karma and all that sort of thing.
Carbon transformation.
Yeah, I thought he said that the outer planets were not as significant than the personal planets were.
Well, here's what he's saying. That's misleading. They're not as significant as describing Chuck's personality. Your Venus in Taurus or your Venus in Leo is very significant of your personality because it moves pretty fast.
Right.
Okay. And your Mars and the 5 personal planets, Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars. Personal planets. They move rapidly and they're very indicative of your personality. Where Pluto out there in Leo, your whole damn generation had it. That's what he's saying to you. They're not as individualized. To coin a phrase by my friend Rick.
So what's the contrast between your point of saying that they're very important, the outer planets?
The outer planets move through the signs very slowly, so
Right.
they're very good in describing your high school class, 5 classes before you, 5 classes after you. You all have a nature that the teachers can say, oh yeah, I remember that group of students. They were like this. And you can't put words to it, but that group has a sense about it that is not so personal, but it's more collective.
Archetype kind of thing?
Yes, exactly. They're all archetypal. It's just that Venus and Mars move so fast in the moon that by me looking at your sun, moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, I can tell a lot about your personality right away because they move very rapidly. And most people don't have the same combinations as you because Venus moves too quickly. The outer planets, the middle planets, Jupiter and Saturn, are more 2 years, 3 years, 1 year. They're more like your high school class and a class behind you. So that's why your class has a particular nature, the other class doesn't. The outer planets are generation. This is why the baby boomers are different than the yuppies that are different from the so-and-sos. That's all you need to know for now. Good question. Now, back here. So, remember, this is a made-up chart. We call this 0 Aries right here. Every year, the sun will be at 0 Aries. The sun goes all the way around every 365 days because we made it up. Okay? We're in sync with spring. The zodiac, the Western astrology, is based upon spring. Spring is when the sun is in the beginning of Aries. Here's the end of Pisces. Here's the beginning of Aries. Then 1 month, it goes all the way around. In the sun, we start to understand the speeds of these things. And it's very crucial that you do. The farther out, the slower the planet moves through the zodiac because it's got farther to go. So the sun's just entered Taurus 7 days ago. This is degrees and minutes. The sun will be in Taurus for another 23 days, then 30 days in Gemini, then 30 days in Cancer, 30 days in Leo, etc. So the sun's very easy to keep track of because it's a degree per day. Now, remember I told you the moon. The moon is once around every month. Every month, full moon, new moon, quarter moons. And we can see that this line is at 9:21, and you can see the moon's creeping up on that line. And in the next couple hours, it's going to cross into the 10th house because the moon moves 1 degree every 2 hours. And these speeds, you've got to know just to have a sense. I mean, could that moon be here? Could it be here? The moon moves 1 degree every 2 hours. Every 2 weeks, 2 weeks from now, it'll be over here. 2 weeks here, it'll be back here. 1 month around. Okay. So now you get an idea on the moon. Now, the other personal planets, Mercury, Venus, and Mars, there's the other 3. The Mercury is always close to the sun. Remember, when you're above the zodiac, looking down at the sun, Mercury is the closest one. So no matter what we do, Mercury's always with the sun. So in fact, whenever the sun is anywhere, Mercury is in the same sign or next door. Mercury is always in the same sign as the sun sign or next door. And it takes 9 months to go around because it goes forward and backward. That's the retrograde. Forward and backward, forward and backward, forward and backward. So you get a sense that Mercury moves 9 months around the solar circle, and it's always close to the sun. So all Tauruses that have ever lived, have Mercury in Taurus or Aries or Gemini. All Scorpios ever have Mercury in Scorpio or Sag or Libra. You got me?
Yep.
Okay, now hold on a minute. All right. You follow me along here, Kathy? Okay, good. All right. Now notice as we start getting farther out, we're going to look at Venus now. And Venus and Mars, when you study, they're very important for your sexual nature, your sensual nature. Venus is your feminine side. Mars is your masculine side. That's those symbols. So the Venus is how you want to be treated, and the Mars is how you treat, largely. In your whole life, I mean, I'm doing this 47 years, and I'm still learning about Mars and Virgo. I mean, I know most of what Mars does in Virgo, but I'm still learning about what Mars does in Libra, what Mars does in Scorpio. You're always going to be learning on these, perfecting these archetypes. Okay. Now, if Mars is how I use my energy, that's what it is, then what do you think in Cancer? It's going to be very sensitive. I don't want to walk somewhere where I might hurt somebody's toes. I don't want somebody stepping on my toes. So people with Mars and Cancer walk carefully. People with Mars and Virgo, people with Mars and Leo, very proudly. I know where I'm going. Let's go. I got to say what I'm saying, do what I'm doing. I'm sure of myself. Mars in Sag, tripping over myself. I'm being carefree. I'm not worried about it. I'm dancing. Mars in Capricorn, very careful, very steady. It's exalted in the sign of Capricorn, which means it's the best place for Mars, which means its energy is used wisely. See, in time, you'll start to learn what the different Marses are like, what the different Venuses are like. That's what you should be doing as a beginner. Learn more about what Mars is like. You don't have to memorize it, just get a feel for it. If I got a guy in church that's always sitting next to me and he's driving me nuts, and all of a sudden I do his chart one day and I look and I can see one of his planets is probably at a right angle to my planet, and my planet's like this, and this one is agitating me. And this you can understand why you have the uncomfortable feeling, or the reverse, why you enjoy somebody being next to you and you're not sure why. I don't know about this couple. I see them and they really look strange together, but boy, they just get along so fine. Their moon and their Venus are nicely aligned. That's what people call chemistry. That's what the planets do. Now, so we see that Mercury stays close to the sun. Venus is also closer to the sun than we are. So Venus can only be 5 places in the same sign as the sun, or 1 or 2 next. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Venus can only be 5 places. It's always in the same sign with the sun, or 1 or 2 signs away. Now, when you get out past the Earth, it changes. The planets can be anywhere. Okay? Now, if my Venus is in Gemini, then you're going to have fun with me. I'm going to take you on a date. Well, I'm going to look up your chart before we go on a date. Well, I'm going to take you on a show where we're going to go see this kind of novelty down at the theater. You're going to love it because it's something different and new. Now, if your Venus is in Taurus, you're probably not going to like it. You want me to take you to the car show? Okay, you want me to take you to the log splitting competition? Things that are Taurian. Okay? Your Venus.
Farm show.
Huh?
A farm show.
A farm show. Exactly right. Your Venus is in Scorpio. You might like to go to the opera. That's not hard to figure out. But you're not going to figure it out till you try. And if you're just waiting every week for this stuff to seep into your head from me talking about it, it ain't going to happen. It's not going to happen. That's why I've been teaching Claudia for a long time. And Claudia puts forth the effort. She understands the difference between a Venus in Scorpio and a Venus in Sag and a Venus in Capricorn. And you don't have to be a magician to just start getting the nature, the nuances. Okay. So you all know from all your studies, watch this, from all your studies, that Aries is basically an impulsive, fiery sign. I like that farm show. That was a really good one. Where am I going here? I got too many images here. Here we go. Okay. All right. Aries is a basic cardinal fire. It's a fiery sign. Taurus is fixed earth. It's very earthy. Fixed gives you the image of an anchor. Fixed, stubborn. I watched a guy last night for the Pittsburgh Pirates. He spent 14 years in the minor leagues. He got his first night in a major league uniform last night. He came in and he struck out. 14 years. Guess what sun sign he was? Not much guessing, is there? Who could put up with this for 14 years? A Taurus. Okay, God bless him. Okay, Gemini is this light, flighty butterfly-like sign. When you talk to them, they're light and fluffy. When you talk to a Cancer, all the Cancer means is the sun is in Cancer. That means they're sensitive, they're delicate, they're emotional, family. When you talk to a Leo, you know the basics of these signs. It's the same energies. Leo is proud, it's colorful, displaying things on stage, expressive. When you talk to Virgos, Virgos are very exacting. They're perfectionists. They like hard work. They like to be judged on their work. You start to pick up these things, let alone reading what's in our book, which is a wealth of information about each sign. When you talk with a Libra is a very social sign, very nice, very smooth, educated, smooth, talented, ambitious, mellow sign. When you talk with a Scorpio, you can sense this turbulence in them. They're very passionate. There's this boiler going on always inside. It's very intense, strong emotions. You can imagine sneaking up and whispering something to Charles Bronson. Then he turns around and looks at you like, what? And you go, I didn't mean nothing. That's Charles Bronson energy. That's Scorpio energy, not Bronson's energy. Then you talk to Dick Van Dyke and Bette Midler, and you're in Sagittarius. Then you talk with, these different Capricorns.
With Rick.
Yeah, Rick. Rick is one of them, yes. A stiff sign, a serious sign, intense sign. Aquarius, you get into people who are very brainy, brainiacs, geniuses. Then you get into the Pisces, and the Pisces are very mellow and maybe somewhat confused. But you got to get these feelings down before you can go anywhere. That's simple. Okay, so let's go back to the zodiac. So we see by looking at the sun and the moon and Mercury, Venus, and Mars, there's your 5 personal planets. Now they go pretty fast. They go through the zodiac. Remember, going through the zodiac is completely different than going through the houses. The houses change once every day. The houses spin around once every 24 hours. Zodiac, once per year. So that's what's confusing. You got a wheel inside a wheel. So then when you get to Jupiter and Saturn, you get to Jupiter in Aries, and you get to Saturn in Libra. These are more mid-level social planets that might describe your high school class. Then when you get to the outer planets, they start describing the nature of your group or your collective. So Saturn is in a sign 28 months. Pluto's in a sign 15 years up to 30 years. Neptune is about 15 years in a sign. So you start to get a sense of how fast these planets are moving through these signs. So that's why if I have a girlfriend and we both have Pluto in Leo, it's no big deal because almost my whole generation does. Okay? Now, so that's why you first got to get to know what planets, how do you find out where the planets are? You go to the Ephemeris. The Ephemeris is a book that shows you where all the planets are for every few minutes of the whole century. And you look up where the planets were. Mars is at 21 Libra. Neptune's at 20 degrees Libra. It tells you where they are. You're getting ahead of me, Miss Erica. The rising sign does change, which we're going to get to. Okay. Now, or you buy software. Okay. Software that tells you this baby's born at this time. This is exactly where the planets were. That's why everybody's so spoiled and they won't do charts by hand, because they know they can punch in a birthday and time and minute and boom, there's a chart. Well, that's really cool, but how do you know if it's not wrong? How do you know if it's right? When you learn to do it from the book, which people aren't going to do anymore, so forget it, you understand both. So that's how you get the planets in the signs. So the night that my son was born, and I went to the hospital, and I had a sheet of paper in my pant pocket because I didn't know what day he'd be born. I knew closely. I knew he was going to have Pluto and Scorpio. I knew he was going to have Neptune and Sag. I didn't know the sun. The sun said it was going to be early Virgo. He came in a day and a half early. He was a Leo, 28 and a half degrees Leo. So I had the paper in my pocket, and I knew basically where his planets were. And when I went home that night, I had the birth time, rest assured. And I did the chart, and I had the whole chart done, and it was close to what I had thought about. So he ended up with Mars in Capricorn, Venus in Leo. So we started to understand his personality because we saw where his planets were placed in the signs. Okay, then you start to look at what houses are they in. And now it starts to take a different connotation. So when you're looking at the planets right now, as if a child is born right now, well, this is 744, actually. Okay, this is where the planets are right now. Did you notice how I gave it to you wrong? The moon is not moving closer to the 10th house. The moon is moving the opposite direction. Remember I told you the moon would be in the 10th house? I'm sorry. The planets move backward through the houses. So the moon is moving the opposite direction. When we started, the moon was here. We moved
I think we're
forward.
seeing the old chart.
For
The
7:44 p.m.
Okay.
There we go.
All right, now 9:03. The moon was here all night. I kept telling you it was going to cross in here, but I was wrong. It's going this direction. So you can see it's going towards the 8th house. All right. Now, when a chart is done, this is a really confusing part of astrology. You have to have the house system determined. And there are many, many different house systems, probably about 15 different house systems. And all a house system is how am I going to divide space? How am I going to divide it? When I look out there and see the moon in the sign of Virgo, well, the moon in Virgo means one thing when it's up here, means something else when the moon in Virgo is down here, means something else if the moon in Virgo is over here, means something else if the moon in Virgo is over here. So that's the house. Okay? That's why this whole chart moves clockwise. If you sit here long enough with this on clock, I got to get this. Let me see here. Okay, here we go. Now I've got it live. Okay, we got it live now. So every 4 minutes, this ascendant's going to change. This is on live. The ascendant changes every 3 minutes and 57 seconds. Okay. Tomorrow at this time, it'll be back around the same place. This is your rising sign. This is the sign that's rising. And I don't know why, but in astrology, this is the east. This is the west. Okay? How it is. This is the east. When you were born, if a child is born right now and you run outside and you point to your east, you will see the 19th degree of Scorpio. Actually, you won't, because the systems are different. You're going to have the sidereal zodiac and the Western one. But astrologically, you got the idea. This child's born with Scorpio rising. So in astrology, there are three main things: your sun sign, your moon sign, which is in Leo, and the rising sign. This child will be a Taurus with a moon in Leo and will be Scorpio rising. Now, do you think this child will be stubborn? Yes, because all three are fixed signs. All three signs are known as being stubborn. Sun in Taurus is stubborn. Moon in Leo is stubborn. Scorpio rising is stubborn. Now, that means he'll be real good. She'll be real good working on a problem, but you may have a hard time getting them off the problem. The guy that's batting for the Pirates, he stayed there 14 years till he got his first at bat. He's got a lot of fixed stuff in his chart. I looked up his chart just for the novelty last night. There's all this Taurus stuff. I'm not giving up. I'm sticking with it. I'm not going to judge you, guy. I don't know if it's good or bad. Okay, so in a couple hours, Sag will be rising. You'll see Sag go. And what's interesting about this, I used to teach class with this on live like it is, and you can watch the sun sign change every few minutes. You can watch the topic in the room change. The subject that people talk about starts changing as the ascendant starts changing. Maybe you're talking about sex, or maybe you're talking about darker parts of life. And then all of a sudden the ascendant goes into Sagittarius. Then people start talking about the ball game and have more fun. So these things happen all the time. We don't even know it. All the time, and we don't even know it. That's why astrology is so important. So, when you pick a house system, in a house system, I'm trying to get all these, they put so many things in your way now. Okay. Okay, here. Okay, these are the house systems. Okay, they're named after different Greek and Roman mathematicians, etc. There's different kinds of, etc. What that's going to do for you, I use Placidus most of the time. Everybody's a little different. What it's going to do for you is going to divide these time and space differently. Time and space. This is why some charts have little tiny houses and great big houses. It depends on if you're near the North Pole, near the South Pole. The signs can squeeze. One house can be 5 degrees, another house is 65 degrees. That's because of the tilt of the Earth and how close you are to the poles. But what it really means is the planets are going through that space in equidistant time. That's all it means. Now, astrologers have different druthers. Most astrologers use the Placidus system. A lot of them use the Koch system, Regiomontanus, equal house system. There are many different systems. And all that does, see how close we're getting to Scorpio? I'm actually going the wrong way again, aren't I? We're going backward. It's going to back up into Libra. See, we're going but now 3 degrees. Scorpio, we're going to back up into Libra here in a few seconds. But those different house systems appear different, and their methods of people have chosen through time. The philosophers argue that the planets in this house are different than that house for these different reasons. Now, a lot of astrologers argue their particular house system. It's been my experience that Placidus has served me very well. Koch system is very good. They both work. They both show you different things. So in one system, Mars might be in the 12th house. In the other system, Mars might be in the 11th house. Okay. So that's the difference. And you just have to use it through time. The least of your worries is what house systems you use. And if you're starting out as a beginner, I strongly advise you use Placidus for now. And later on, you can start investigating other systems.
Rick,
Yes.
I was also very confused about, on the Western astrology wheel like this, why the ascendant is on the left-hand side, but then I finally figured it out. And it was also confusing to me. I always thought, the midheaven looks like it should be north, and the
Well,
IC
it's
should
not
be
always.
south,
It's
but-
not always north. It's what's above you.
but it's not north. It's actually south.
No,
And
no,
the
no.
north is
No,
the
no,
one
no,
on the
no,
bottom.
no. This is north. This is south. This is
That's what I'm
east.
saying.
This is east.
So,
This is west.
right.
It's
So
the
if
south
you are
end.
standing on the planet Earth and you face to the south, you face your body to your south, right? So your right hand,
You look up or down, Erica.
but I'm saying your right hand, while you're facing south, your right hand is facing east. And that's why
That's correct. That's
it's
correct.
east on
That's
here.
correct. But what we're looking for in astrology is what's the point above you. This is called the zenith, not north,
Right.
above you. This is the
Right.
zenith. This is the nadir.
But
Okay.
they all rise. The planets rise in the east and they go clockwise.
The planets
But the
go.
zodiac goes counterclockwise. And that becomes so confusing until you get it into your mind that you're basically
That's the big confusion of astrology.
right.
Yes. The planets
Because
are
they're
going.
actually moving, but the constellation is going the other way.
That's exactly right.
And that's why it drives us crazy until
Well,
we're like,
when you're
okay,
new-
that's right.
When
If
you
I can
knew it-
offer a suggestion, thinking of it as the day turns the earth much faster, so the timing and the houses are changing at a much faster rate than the planets are moving. Because that's the planetary movement is apparent compared to the speed of the earth rotating on its axis.
Now, for now, all you need to do, in time, you'll start to just get it naturally, is remember that whatever house system is used, the midheaven is calculated for you, which is the part above you, and the nadir is calculated. Then the ascendant is always 9 o'clock on the clock. It's always in the east, and the descendant is always there. Those become the 4 major angles. That's the 4 major angles of a chart. Critical. These are like the main 4 pieces of wood on a kite. They're critical. They're a big deal in astrology. This ascendant tells you everything about this whole quadrant. This nadir tells you all about this whole quadrant. This descendant bespeaks of the whole relationship of houses 7, 8, 9, and the midheaven 10, 11, 12. So, for instance, what you need to know for now, you see how it's getting closer here? We're off on the wrong. Here it is. It's hard to teach when something keeps moving. Okay, now, when you have Mars in Cancer, it means one thing. When Mars is in Cancer in the 9th, and Mars is in Cancer in the 10th, and Mars is in Cancer in the 11th, it means 3 different things. Okay? So, in a natal chart, your planets are in a house to stay. Your planets are in a sign and in a house to stay. But when you're watching the active zodiac change, these planets are always changing. This is why people write horoscopes and watch this from Friday through Sunday and watch this period here, because they're mapping out how the planets are moving through the zodiac. Just like Erica said, they're moving through the zodiac in one way, but they're actually moving through the zodiac rather slowly. They're moving through the house system quickly, because they completely turn around in one per day. The moon tomorrow is always 13 degrees later. The moon tomorrow at this time will be 13 degrees later. It's approximate. That's just how the moon moves. Okay, so, but as far as learning astrology, what did I tell you? You got to learn more about what the planet does, what the planet in the sign does, and what the planet is like in that particular house. Now, if I have Mars in my 8th house, that's probably pretty good if I want to be a psychology student or I want to dig mines. Mars is in my 9th house. I'm probably energized about college, taking a lot of college classes, maybe traveling abroad to different types of university. Mars in the 10th. Maybe I'm very active in my career. I'm very ambitious. Mars in my 12th. Maybe I'm quiet. I want to just go in my little hole and hide there. I just want to be a hermit. Mars in the 1st house. Maybe I'm a bodybuilder. So you can see how the planets in each house give a whole different experience to the planet in the sign. Planet in the sign, in the house. Now, as you can tell, you can see the sun is gone, the sun is set. Right, this particular chart is 919, but this is your horizon. This is actually what's rising, what's setting. If you look in the sky now, you will see Venus and Mars and the moon. And over the next few hours, they will start to set. Venus will set, Mars will set, the sun has set about 45 minutes ago. These all have meanings. All these things have meanings. But to get to my last 12 minutes, we'll probably continue some of this next week. Let me reiterate a couple of things. Each sign, each planet is in a sign. That's matching it to the zodiac. Okay? It's the planet to the sign. Then it's in the house, as the houses keep moving. Now the aspects come into play. And as the planets are moving, the aspects change. And the main aspects in astrology, there are many, but the main ones are the planets conjunct, like Mercury's next to Uranus. You give it about 9 degrees either way, approximate. Everybody's different. Are they opposite each other, such as the moon is opposite Pluto? Whole different meaning than if the moon and Pluto were next door to each other. Are they at a right angle to each other, such as the sun is square to the moon? That's a quarter of a moon. That acts differently than a full moon or a new moon. So you've got the conjunction, the opposition, the square, the trine, which is the red lines, 1/3 of the way around, and they're very harmonious. This moon is trine to Chiron. That's a very harmonious aspect that means special kinds of talents, or a sextile, which is your minor one. That's where the signs are 2 signs apart, such as Uranus is sextile to Mars, or 60 degrees, and Saturn is sextile to the sun. They're harmonious too, they're just not as strong. So your main aspects are together, conjunction, opposition, square, trine, which is the big triangle, or half of the trine, which is 2 signs away, sextile. So there is your basis about why it's hard to learn astrology. Now, if you're a newcomer to this station, you can go to YouTube, Rick DiClemente, episode 154, which is the beginning of a 10-week course. I got tired of teaching after so many years, and I taught for 10 weeks solid. Just my beginning course, which is just almost exactly like this book. It's really recommended that you buy the book to get in sync with the class. This is a free class. It lasts 10 weeks, and each week is about an hour and a half on the signs, the houses, the aspects, the basics of astrology. It goes on for 10 weeks. Now, we went 8 weeks, and then this thing called COVID came along. So we stopped for 2 weeks while we all freaked out to try to figure out if the sky was falling when COVID came. And then I picked up weeks 9 and weeks 10. So if you can't find it that way, just go to Rick DiClemente in YouTube, beginning class, the words beginning class. And you will find week 1, week 2, week 3. And it walks you gently through all of them. Take it at your own rate. Now, a couple of things. You're just not going to get far if you don't recall and memorize the symbols, how fast these things move, what's basically different between Mars and Leo and Mars and Capricorn. If Mars is how you use your energy, then Mars and Leo is going to be different than Mars and Capricorn. And you need to have a basic sense of it. What's the book called again, Claudia?
Stephen Arroyo's Chart Interpretation Handbook.
Stephen Arroyo, Chart Interpretation Handbook. 10 or 15 bucks is the book you must have because it's really excellent. After many years of astrologers, he really distills things down into this is the positive side of Mars that you're likely to see. This is the negative side of Mars that you're likely to see. And you got to get a feel for these planets. And that's what this book gives you. So it's really excellent. All right. Then the planet is in a house. And you're only going to learn that through time. Well, my buddy's got Mars in the 2nd. She's got Mars in the 5th. You start to see what's different. Examine their behavior. That's the only way you learn. You look at a chart and say, well, this doesn't seem to match. Then you find out the birth time is off by 4 hours. And you figure out why. But after you start to learn that the planets behave so-and-so in the signs, and thusly in a house, then we start to see the complications. And that's where you're going to need me, because the books will scare the hell out of you. Ooh, Mars is opposite Saturn, and Pluto's square the moon. And the books will just scare the hell out of you. Ooh, it's going to do all this stuff. And it's just not that bad. So So just come to me, double check before you do. Okay, so then you get the planets in the houses. So then you start using software like we talked about. You start saving people's charts, mom and dad, wife and girlfriend and boyfriend. You start saving people's charts. Then you start to do the transits. And the transits are, where are the planets now? Where were the planets in 1980? Where were the planets in that? Somebody came to me the other day. She said her whole life has changed since 2019. I mean, devastating. So I immediately put her birth chart up while she was talking, and I spun the outside circle to 2019. Birth chart in the middle. I put the second ring on outside, watching the planets go in 2019, ignoring all the planets except the outer four. I saw Pluto sitting right on something. If something's life changing big time, it's going to be one of the big planets: Pluto, Neptune, Uranus, Saturn. And I saw where the trouble started. And I watched it go for the next couple of years. I let her talk about it. And then through her talking about it, I could tell whether she was using the energy right or wrong. Because when these energies go through you, that's the part where we talk about what got into you, what's come over him. I don't know what got into me. That's the thing we're talking about. And you don't have to go any further than that. That's it. And until you get that section mastered, you're wasting your time. Okay? Or you're just goofing around. Okay? Because if you came down with MS in 1974, you're going to want to know, where were the planets in 1974 compared to my birth chart? Pluto was squaring my sun. You're not going to come down with MS when planets not hitting something. It's not going to happen. If the planet's not there, the event is not there. They're one and the same. Oh, I met this woman and we went through a terrible divorce. Well, let's go look at your planets. Where were the planets when you met the person? Where were the planets when you divorced the person? How does her chart match up with your chart? Put one on top of the other. Now we're talking astrology. So you've done very well to not throw me out of the building. Just stick with me. I know that it's confusing, but that's really about it. I mean, there are many, many other parts to it that are way beyond complex. But I'm telling you, if you read somebody and they're going blah, 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 and you're not getting any feel for what's happening, get rid of that author. If you're reading predictions and they're telling you whether your hat's going to be on sideways or frontways this weekend, get rid of the person. You're going to know when you're reading somebody well, good, because they're going to tell you how you're feeling. They're going to tell you what's been coming over you and how it's been making you feeling, and that's starting to leave. That's why I spend so much time in this show expressing myself. When this planet is coming, it's going to make you feel so and so, and these are your options, and then it's going to leave, it's going to subside. And we even back way up and talk about major things like Pluto going into Aquarius for the whole planet. That's why we talk about that. So I hope this has helped you. If you have any thoughts or suggestions, I would rather you just email them to me. rick@starself.com. rick@starself.com, like yourself, myself. If you would like to see me cover a certain subject, put it in your own words. Say, I have trouble with this. Please explain this. Show me some examples of this. Just send me an email and I'll toss them up in that little bingo thing that we turn around and see what subject. We'll see what subject comes up. But you've done very well. I like tonight because I know some of you are advanced, some of you are beginners, but you really saw tonight what the basics are about. In time, you'll get better with the houses, you'll get better with the aspects, you'll get better with the transits. And when a planet comes over you, you won't sweat it so much and you'll learn from it. And you'll learn that planets coming over are merely life happening. Their life unfolding. So Shelby, you go take care of your mother.
Yeah, she's here taking a bath.
I know about it at best.
She loved tonight because you talked the whole time. And that's her
Okay.
favorite thing when you talk. So
Well, if you ever need to hire me to put her to bed, I'll come over and
that'd be good.
I'll talk to her. Everybody, thank you very much. You've been very patient. It's not a simple subject. I'll have this on the web in the next few hours. Thanks to everybody.
Good
Love you
night.
all.
Thanks, Rick.
Go
Thanks,
Bucks.
Thank
everybody.
you, Rick. I hope
Take
we
care,
can all
all.
sleep well tonight.
Hope we all sleep well tonight.
Yes.
Please.
Everybody take care.
Good night.